All right. Places, people, places. And we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2. I know, you see, the world would be so strange to me. Don't lie to me. You loved that show too as a kid. Minus the Dan Schneider parts. Anyway. Are my hands broken? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another thrilling episode of Atheist Church Audit. Special edition, don't leave, because today was a fantabulous collaboration with my friend, Ruslan. This was a hoot of a time. Great fun all around. Ruslan was in the North Carolina area where I reside, and he invited me to go to a megachurch with him. Authentic Church in Hickory, I think? And the title of megachurch is a little bit of a misnomer. This was actually like a relatively small church, a good-sized church. The title of megachurch comes into play when you talk about their online presence. So don't quote me on this, but I want to say that they have like 300 people per service, but then they have 3 services. So it's somewhere in the ballpark between like 900 and 1,200 regular attendees across that. But then their online presence is huge. From what I heard, they are the second largest church online streamed church in North Carolina. Second only to Elevation Church with Pastor Stephen Furtick. And I'll say some nice things, but I gotta get this out of the way first. I don't like that. I don't like online church. My entire pitch to both atheists and Christians and everyone across the spectrum is close your laptop and turn off your phone and go have an in-person interaction with people. And it terrifies me that there are some places that think that like this is a substitute for in-person interactions. I don't care if it's a church, I don't care if it's a synagogue, just something. You go to a march, go to a protest, go volunteer at a dog shelter or an old folks home or a homeless shelter, and just be in person with some humans. Now, I will be very quick to say that their online presence doesn't necessarily mean that people are treating it as a substitute for Sunday morning worship. The vast majority of their online viewership, I'm sure, is supplementing their normal church community with some sermons that they really like. Totally fair, totally valid. And I'm not against, entirely against people, live streaming their services. I get it. Sometimes you get COVID. Sometimes you break your leg and you gotta stay home. And it's like, oh man, I look forward to this or that sermon. And those people should have an option to watch it and stay at home. Totally fair. But for the handful of people who do go for the sermon and they just watch it online and that's all they get out of it, that feels kind of icky. So like I said, I grabbed dinner with the pastor and with Ruslan the night before. And it was interesting and cool hearing his backstory and hearing how all of this, led up to him being the pastor of this community. Part of his journey to this current pastoral position was him working at Elevation Church for a while. And those roots are very clearly evident through here. And credit where credit's due, part of his story was him, sharing about the health struggles of his daughter. It sounds like he and his wife had a really difficult go of things with one of their kids, and they've had a lot of health scares. And the way that they tell the story is that God came through for them again and again and again, which culminated in the health and well-being of their daughter and in them now having this church to pastor. I bring that up just to, remind myself that, there's always something like that going on behind the scenes, even in communities that I'm not particularly vibing with. And I think that's like the point of this entire thing is I feel bad, man. I want to try to see the silver lining in this stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot, but maybe just the way that it struck me today, I just don't like this vibe. I'm sorry. In other times where I've gone to mega churches, or large Baptist-costal non-denom churches, I've been able to throw some flowers at it. It's just so antithetical to who I am as a person. And I don't want that to come across as a straight up criticism of this community. But I can't clench my teeth and pretend that I actually am a super big fanboy of this vibe. So Ruslan and I pull up to the church at like 8 a.m., something like that, stupid early. And the church is there in a shopping center, like a mini mall. And ironically, the church is literally right next to a Planet Fitness, which totally checks out because Pastor Bobby is yoked. Like if Stephen Furtick and him had an arm wrestling contest, I'm sure that like the gravitational orbit of the power, vested in both of their biceps would just, cause at least a few cars to like slide into their gravitational pull and collide and slam into each other, Marvel style. You get the joke I'm trying to make. Anyway, so we pull up to the mini mall church and we go inside. However, we didn't realize that like the official entrance was on the other side. So when we walked into the room, we actually walked into the green room, like the back room. So like the musicians and Pastor Bobby were there in the green room. And we're all dabbing up each other and saying hi and hello. And I keep cracking this joke. Can we like open up like prize picks or FanDuel and like make a bet? Or will Jared give his life back to Jesus today? $20. $20, come on. And I know that some of my atheist friends will hear that and they'll be like, you can't joke with them because that's slightly affirming their worldview. And I don't see it as that. I just don't care enough to like slam my foot down at every moment and try to, dismantle these people's worldview or anything like that. I'm just a guy. I don't know. While I was in the green room, I like cracked that joke with Pastor Bobby.
We got a poll going on if Jared's going to give his life back to Jesus.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
We got 30-70 odds.
We cast out demons. 100%.
And he was joking. I know he's joking. But there just sounded like a tinge of like, And so now, I don't know, like it's in the back of my mind that, man, maybe people who go to this church will hear this critique and think that it's like demonically inspired rather than just, I don't know, a lack of coffee inspired. So Ruslan and I walk out and we're at the very front of the auditorium place, church, sanctuary. We've got 2 front row seats. And then the worship team comes out and plays some music. But before they do, there was a weird thing that I've never seen before. And they had like a teaser for the worship itself that you were about to participate in. It was like a very high quality, very nicely put together, Blackmagic cameras, Blackmagic ProRes, 12-bit RAW of like, all of the pretty people on stage, like raising their hands. And it's one thing when you see that like in a live setting, right? You are watching the performance live as it happens, but it feels different when you're making like a sizzle reel for worship, because it didn't feel like it was emphasizing God or Jesus. It felt like, oh man, worship itself is really sexy. And that made me uncomfortable. It felt like the emphasis was on the aesthetic of worship. Like, oh man, like, don't you want to be like these cool, trendy, sexy Hillsong-esque musicians? And it's like, I'm not questioning these people's devotion to Jesus at all, but it just felt like it was emphasizing the wrong thing. And it was a small thing, and I don't mean to hyperfixate on it, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. I made a new ex-Mormon friend recently, and he was talking about this phenomenon as well. He was from Salt Lake City, and he was talking about how like, I think it's a known phenomenon that like plastic surgery is huge in Utah. And there's a big obsession with keeping up with the Joneses and trying to put on the appearance of we are this happy, safe Latter-day Saint family. And at times, the appearance of holiness or the appearance of family values trumps family. A family that does that. A family whose like marriage is on the rocks, but they're always smiling and putting on the face.
She is the devil. I'm in hell.
And here, it felt like the thing that was being emphasized was like, oh man, I look so cool. I'm like giving my all to God. It just felt like very neat and very tidy. But as per usual in services like this, I have to give a shout out to the musicians. They are wildly talented, very pretty, very put together. The whole service takes a lot of coordination, and I don't want to crap on that, right? There is sincerity in, giving God your all through excellence, in good stewardship. It's not my vibe. It's not my flavor. Metalheads, all the same, talented people. So worship finishes up, and then the pastor comes out on stage, and then we had a jump scare. We had a...
I lied to you earlier.
Good.
I got a confession. I'm actually preaching today.
You bastard. And boy, howdy, what a treat. I was actually like very surprised. I was not expecting that. I should have. I don't know why I wasn't, but I just kind of assumed like we're just gonna go and listen to the sermon. But it makes sense that that's why he was traveling to actually like do speaking engagements rather than just visit churches. Then he'd be me. So then Ruslan jumps up on stage and preaches a sermon. And I'll give it to him. It was a good sermon. I liked it. I've got some like thoughts on it, but I don't actually have any criticisms of the sermon itself. But I do kind of want to zoom out and talk about what I think is happening there with regards to religion. So Ruslan's sermon was all about identity and your, identity in Christ and being a productive, contributing member of your church and kind of getting your shit together and having at its root, with all of that, your identity as a saved son or daughter of Jesus. And it was really good. And the one thing that I have to commend Ruslan on is that he sincerely wants to see the people in his community and in the extended community of the Christian world, he wants to see them thrive and successful and doing well, and I am all about that. He wants to see people out of debt and financially stable. He wants to see people healthy and taking care of their physical bodies, not neglecting doctor's visits, going to the gym, doing all of those very important things to make sure that you are set up for a lifetime of goodness. And he and I are equally passionate about this thing, which is Roth IRAs. If you support me on Patreon, but you don't have a Roth IRA and you're not regularly contributing to it, please unsubscribe from my Patreon and please go invest in a Roth IRA. Your future is very, very important and you need to be doing that. And so the fact that he wants people to be well, I think is really good and really commendable. And it's often one of these things that gets kind of overlooked in the Christian world. Pastors will hyperfixate on whether or not a person is saved or whether they're going to heaven or hell or whether or not their doctrine is correct and properly figured out. But then there's just the pragmatics of it. Like there's a dude in your church who's lost like $6,000 on FanDuel. My brother in Christ, repent. I'm being judgy, I'm sorry. But like, if there are people in your congregation who don't understand how predatory some of these short-term lending companies are, or how predatory some of these sports betting companies are, or how the bulk of just this evil conglomerate of American corporations are that are trying to prey on you as an individual, if somebody in your congregation is just unnecessarily suffering because of these vitriolic people and companies, you should step in and like try to help them not do that and think about their long-term future so that they can be a blessing to themselves and to other people and their families. So overall, I liked Ruslan's sermon. However, I can't shake like this feeling that what's being done in some of his talking points are kind of a form of syncretism. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm like here for it, right? I'm glad that this world of like productivity and getting your crap together is being blended with Christianity in a certain way, I think, but it is worth like calling out. And interestingly, it's worth calling out because I've seen it in other religions as well. I've talked a little bit about like my study of Islam that I did for my senior thesis, and part of that was not just studying the Quran or studying the Hadith. I also wanted to like do my best to try at least a little bit to kind of see like the gamut of how modern Muslims are living their lives. And so part of that was reading a book that I picked up called The Productive Muslim. And the thing that's so striking to me is that like a lot of the same things that were being done in this sermon, where it's like, oh wow, the Bible actually predicted the things that are now confirmed by modern science. That was a common talking point that I heard in that book, The Productive Muslim. And so like the point of the Bible, right, is not to be a more productive person. And the point of the Quran and the Hadith are not to be a productive person. However, you can do kind of the same thing, and both texts are like open-ended enough that you can kind of draw from them these inspirations to be a healthier, more productive person.
What is Islamic worldview productivity? And I came across this hadith and realized, wow, every productivity guru says, wake up early, wake up early, wake up early. And they can't explain why. And here it is. He tells us that there's barakah in his early hours. There's something special in his early hours. Make the most of it. So we realize, oh, whoa, okay, now that's very powerful, this idea of barakah.
And to be charitable, both preachers, both authors, they're trying to answer the same question of like, how do you do life as a modern religious person while respectively taking these very different set of texts and trying to live as a religious person? It's like both preachers want to, stress to their communities, hey, you need to be happy and healthy and productive. And then they're looking for very specific examples of how they can source that through their respective holy texts. Now, I don't think Abu Bakr or the Apostle Paul, if they were resurrected, would look at either of these and be like, hey, that's bad. But it does seem interesting, or maybe worth calling out, that it seems like, the sway of modernity is influencing both of these interpretive lenses. And the same thing is being done both in Christian and Muslim circles, where they will say things like, and the Bible or the Quran are now, confirming things that the modern scientific theories are, have known for a long time. And I don't really know what to make of that, other than just to say that that seems like a very human tendency to try to, read back what we know now as moderners into ancient texts. For example, Ruslan will quote the Bible in one sentence and then cite Atomic Habits in the next.
Identity must be rehearsed and not assumed. So how many of you guys ever heard of a book called Atomic Habits? Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits is a book by James Clear. It's a book about habit formation, and it's really interesting because a lot of what James Clear writes about actually confirms what the scriptures from antiquity for thousands of years have been teaching all along.
And kind of try to create this synergy between the two texts. It's not the most contrived thing, but it's interesting to me that it's being done like that, right? It was never the main point of any of these texts that, from the New Testament that are being cited. I don't know what to make of the whole thing, but take it with a grain of salt. It's just interesting. So I don't know that I have any real big takeaways from this whole shindig. I mean, it feels so shallow and silly, just kind of blasting a church because I don't vibe with it. Not everyone likes heavy metal. Not everyone likes K-pop. Not everyone likes, I don't know, country music. And even to zoom out a little bit further, this is so weird. This is such a niche statement and phenomenon. There were some people who had streetwear that was Jesus themed. And listen, I get it. Christian merch, it's a big thing. It's a big phenomenon. I get it. I used to make, true story, I used to make my own Jesus merch back in the day. I never sold it. I just made one-off t-shirts. One of the shirts that I made and wore around, it was a straight up public humiliation ritual for me, where on the front it said free hugs and prayer. And people took me up on it. It was very uncomfortable. I was 15 and having, 40-year-old women asking for hugs, but I did it to myself. I totally of my own volition. But on the back of my shirt, it had my testimony, oh man, I was so sad before Jesus, and I used to look at porn, and then Yahweh saved me, something like that. And it was very silly, but very sincere. So I've been there, I've done that, but I vividly recall, somebody having a shirt that just said Yeshua on it. And there was a dude there that I saw who just had a hat that just said Yahweh. And again, I've been there, I've done that, I've been that guy. But now being on the other side of it, I wanted to pull a Will Smith and grab his hat and say, keep your Lord's name out of your effing hat. Jews in the ancient world and to this day, they don't say the name Yahweh. They don't pronounce the Tetragrammaton. They consider it so holy that you ought not even utter it. If you are doing a Torah reading and you come across Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, the name of God in the Old Testament, they literally just replace it with Adonai, which is lowercase Lord, because it is so unspeakably holy. It is so perfect and sacred and unattainably good that you shouldn't even defile it even by speaking it. And so I see that kind of reverence from some of my Jewish homies, and then I contrast that with just slap it on a t-shirt. And man, it's I get it, to some regard or some degree, because it's you love Jesus, you love God, and you want to show your devotion to him. How do you do that? Well, man, I want God merch and stuff. But it feels so commoditized, right? And by having it commoditized, it feels less sacred. You know, it's kind of like, are you team Nike or team Adidas? And then somebody says, neither, I'm team Jesus. Is God your mascot, or is he the lover of your soul? There's this verse that always stuck out in my mind that says something along the lines of, but Mary treasured up all of these things and pondered them in her heart. And just like the vibe of that, right? You know, she kept these things and treated them as sacred. She didn't feel the need to broadcast it. It wasn't the kind of thing that she needed to brand onto a tote bag. It was something intimate between her and the Lord. And there's something really beautiful about that. But credit where credit's due, right? At the beginning of the service, during the praise and worship, right before the sermon, there was a couple of people up there at the altar who were crying and praying for some miracle to happen in their life. And I always have so much empathy and respect for that, right? Invariably, it's always the people in these communities that kind of redeem it for me. They're sincere, honest, hardworking people who are looking for help where they can find it. And usually that is from the Lord. But that kind of human connection, that's the thing that like I want out of churches. And my big concern with this place and with a lot of, multi-campus churches and online ministries is that they're online. I want the sweet old ladies in my community to be able to have somewhere to go when, their grandkids won't talk to them and they're lonely and they need someone to sit and pray with them. But the way that this entire thing was talked about made me really uncomfortable. In listening to the pastor, it sounds like this era of his ministry started on TikTok, and he blew up on TikTok, and then it kind of bled over into Instagram, and then it became a big thing on YouTube. And now he's got a church that has, thousands of people watching him on the internet. And there's kind of a very looming, gross question to me about how effective some Christian ministers think that like online ministry is. Like I'll watch some YouTubers and they'll say like, and be sure to devote to our ministry. And it's like, dude, if you haven't prayed with somebody like in person, you're not ministering. You're a YouTuber. What's important is like what's happening in person. The people who are crying with each other, the people who are marrying and burying their communities. Nothing that happens on the YouTube internet sphere is really that important. None of it's really that deep. All of my crap is like glorified brain rot content. The people who are making like a long lasting impact on their community are the people who are doing stuff in person consistently over the course of years. And that is why my consistent pitch is to go and explore the communities around you. Go and explore a mosque. Go and explore a crazy Pentecostal church. Go and explore a Mormon ward. Go see the people around you. Go have in-person encounters. Share life with these people. And touch grass, for God's sake. Go and just be with people, man. Because this parasocial bullshit is not a replacement for you interacting with your fellow man. So, thanks so much to Authentic Church for having me this time. Sorry. And thanks to Ruslan for inviting me out. Always a joy. And shout out to Chris, my man. He was rocking this really nice 24-105 f4 constant. And I like that lens. It's a good lens. My name is Jared. I'm an atheist. Go to church, or go dance in the rain, or go swim in a lake, or go on a Hinge date. That could be fun. Shoot your shot, man.